Um, you may not be able to tell. I come from Northern Ireland. When I was a child, I grew up in Northern Ireland during the fighting and the bombing. So it was my life from the age of 11 up until 18. And what I could not bear was the lack of communication, the polarization between two communities who should get on because of religion and politics. And at 18, I left. And in actual fact, I have never lived in Northern Ireland since. But nevertheless, I left there and I went just to find out something about the world other than this little, tight, bigoted environment that I grew up in. And I went to work for a community in the city of Glasgow with people who were homeless, lived on the streets, were alcoholic and drug abusers. I don't know whether you remember that well. You know, at 19, I was going to save the world, you know? The naivety of youth. And I went and I helped these people on the streets. And it wasn't very long before I realized the arrogance that comes from trying to help someone. And I learned a very important lesson, that there's a certain quality of helping that reinforces helplessness. It actually, by trying to rescue someone, you actually make them incapable of managing themselves. So, at 19, I learned that there is something more to supporting someone than helping save them from themselves. I had the good fortune to work with groups in Alcoholics Anonymous. Are you familiar? Yes? Actually, does that mean you've been? Oh, no, I shouldn't ask that question, should I? And there within the group of Alcoholics Anonymous, it's always about taking responsibility, self-responsibility. How do you manage your addiction and find the route through yourself? And I didn't know it then, but this was the beginning of understanding coaching, what I understand coaching to be now. I then went through a process of being a teacher, teaching children who were violent, again, abusers of glue and all sorts of substances. And I taught them woodwork, which is rather risky and dangerous. And again, I had to find a style of teaching that allowed them to express themselves, to communicate often their anger, their despair, without damaging me or the other pupils in the class. So again, I was learning something else about how to guide and create and develop people in a way that doesn't help, but doesn't actually control either. I then, as a result of some of those experiences, went into psychology and psychotherapy, so I understood more about how to manage and develop and understand people. My career then took me into training and actually running an institute in London, the Gestalt Psychotherapy Institute. I was managing director of that for 10 years. And there I began to understand, how do we translate all of this stuff about working with people into business? How does that connection happen? And in those early stages, I had what I would now call coaching. I had help to run a business. I went with the Institute of Directors and I learned about running a business, which took me into consulting. And then in 2000, I was looking back and saying, what do I want to do next? And coaching had really just come into the marketplace. People were talking about coaching, and I kind of really began to understand the language that people were talking about and how it connected with all of the different elements of my life, right back to the age of 19, and understanding all of those links. And so with a couple of other colleagues, we did some research to understand what was really effective in creating a coaching program, and set up the Academy of Executive Coaching. And since then have evolved and developed. But the key bit that has stayed with me all the way through until now is that coaching, as opposed to helping, it reinforces empowerment. So coaching is all about getting people to find their own resources, to take initiative, to make choices, and solve their own problems rather than actually getting someone else to solve them for them.